As we wrap up the World Disability Month, that is November, South Africa also observes Disability Rights Awareness Month between the 3rd of November to the 3rd of December. This year's theme is empowering persons with disabilities through resourceful, sustainable and safe environments. This time provides an opportunity to focus on the rights of persons living with disabilities and highlight the shortfalls in laws protecting their rights and how to remove these barriers to improve the quality of life of people living with disabilities. Today we look into the rights of workers injured and disabled on duty, and to take this discussion further, then we're now joined via Zoom by Dr Miranda Moloto. She is the Head of Rehabilitation at the Rand Mutual Assurance. Doctor, a very good afternoon to you. Thanks very much for joining us here on SABC News.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to your viewers as well.
Well, you know, Doctor, many people have had the experience of either being injured on duty, hurt on duty, and I think the first thing is that people don't really know where to start when something like this happens. Of course, one would want to exhaust internal remedies, but from that point onwards, what does one then do?
Right. So employees that have been injured, and if they are with an employer that is with either the compensation fund or ourselves at Rand Mutual Assurance or with FEMA, the other social insurer, then those people are covered from the time of injury. And when their injury is reported to us, there is a whole process, a claims process that their claim goes through, and all their medical benefits are paid for until they are adjudicated to be either permanently disabled or temporarily disabled, and then they are able to either go back to work or their original pre-injury place. But what we also do at Rand Mutual is that we compensate ex-employees that we call pensioners and they get their pension, a monthly pension, or when they are not getting their monthly pension, we are in the process of launching a pilot program, a rehabilitation program, because not everyone that gets injured is injured enough to be totally disabled to go and stay at home. And you can imagine the plight of a minor that becomes disabled.
Yeah.
We've been compensating people for over 128 years now, and most of those people, a good chunk of them, end up at home disgruntled with loss of dignity and a perpetuation of their cycle of poverty because they were never rehabilitated or placed in alternative places of work where they can still contribute to society.
Yeah, and let's talk about the responsibility then of the employer in attending to such cases of disabilities that are due to work injuries. And I also want us to bear in mind the fact that, you know, there are also people in the workplace who aren't necessarily employees. We have temp workers, you've got freelancers, you've got casual workers, and worse still, you've got, you know, informal workers, you know, contractors, for example, who might even be working in worst case scenario without contracts. You know, does the employer or whoever's, you know, put them in that work have a duty when those people have indeed been injured?
Absolutely. We live in a country that has got firstly the OSH Act, the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1993. That is an act that really obligates employers to protect and to make sure that employees are not injured. And it does this by assigning duties to the employer, the stuff that the employer needs to do. They need to do a health risk assessment, make sure the workplace is safe, have resources that are watching the health and safety of workers in Section 8. But you've got employees as well that have got their own duties. When an employer puts up a sign to say, do not enter this area without protective equipment, they are supposed to do that. And there are all sorts of segments of the law where the employee themselves have got a duty of protecting themselves and being their brother's keeper.
Yeah.
And then the ultimate duty is that of reporting.
Yeah.
When your accident happens at work, within the next shift, you need to have reported to the employer. And the Act further bestows a responsibility for what is called contractors. The minute you step into a place that has got more than 50 people, you are supposed to have the OSH Act up on your wall, and you are supposed to be following the OSH Act as an employer. And contractors are indeed part of the workforce, because they would never otherwise have been in your workplace as an employer if they hadn't been contracted to your company. So there are rules about that. And if all of that fails, then there is the Compensation of Injuries and Diseases Act, right? And that is where, when an employee gets injured, the employer has got the duty to report to either Rent Mutual Assurance or Compensation Fund or FEMA, and that injury goes through the claims process then.
Yeah.
So there are laws about that.
But,
yeah.
You know, you're talking about the employees' duties, but of course we're talking within employment. But let's talk about when one is seeking a job, and when people obviously get contracts, they get excited and they just want to sign. But is there a duty, on the part of the employee to make sure that the environment that they're working in is, number one, safe, but also that there are measures in place that should he or she get injured during duty, that it will be dealt with swiftly and properly by the employer?
Unfortunately for a job seeker, right, the person who is not in the workplace yet, they do not have any sort of claim, or they can't insist on certain things that an employer hasn't put in place. The employer's duty, the reason why you do business is that you are going to be productive and you have a profit, so that your business stays open. But part of the South African law is that you follow all the rules of employment, whether it is the Labour Relations Act, whether it is the Employment Equity Act, and along all of those includes OSH Act and the COID Act, right? So job seekers, unfortunately, when you are not registered as my employee inside of my workplace, you are not protected yet. But in mines, for instance, in mines where you will find that a mine will subcontract several subcontractors, there is also an additional act, the Mine Health and Safety Act, that gives vicarious responsibility to a mine to protect the lives and the health of employees. But as a job seeker, and informal workplaces, unfortunately, do not have that obligation. And as I said, when an employer employs one person, for instance, before 2017, I think, even domestic workers were not included in the Act, but now they are, fortunately. Yeah.
All right, Dr. Moloto, a great pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for giving us your time here on SABC News, and I'm sure we'll have you on the show again soon. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, listeners.
All right. That is Dr. Miranda Moloto, who's the Head of Rehabilitation at Rand Mutual Assurance Disability.